Put on your helmets and buckle your chin straps for the wildest podcast held in the Steel City. Dubs and Chicken Hawk will give you a taste of the past in fried jumbo.
All right, hey, welcome everybody to our 52nd episode of Fried Jumbo, the Fried Jumbo podcast. We're extremely excited to have Bob Weaver with us. Bob is a wonderful artist. He also was an educator for 37 years at Yough School District as an art teacher, wrestling coach. He taught track or coached track as well, right?
Cross country also.
And cross country as well.
Yeah.
So he was a community man, doing lots of great things, helping people learn about life and the arts. And we're going to talk to him a lot about, how he took lessons learned from his childhood and was able to share what he learned with others so that he's been able to affect multiple generations here. We also have Luke Fleming here with us as our guest host today because our buddy Chicken Hawk is in Philadelphia on business. So Luke's going to sit in.
Great to be here, and great to have you, Mr. Weaver.
Oh, great to be here. Yeah, it's an honor.
Thank you.
Yeah. So before we get started on asking you a lot of questions and things, I do want to let you know a couple funny stories that I have about your family, because we're maybe 12 years, 13 years apart, which was a huge thing when we were kids, right? Because I'm 5, you're 18, but now we're sort of, closing in on one another.
Right. Sure.
But when you guys actually lived right up the street from us, you were on 9th Street in Penguin, right by the ball field there, and we were on 10th Street, down below you by the Penguin Apartments.
Sure.
And then your brother, George, ended up moving in, was our next door neighbor. His brother, George, was our neighbor for probably 10 years or so before we moved away.
Right.
Yeah. Sure. And he's a great guy. And I just remember your backyard up on 9th Street, we'll start there, had a trampoline, like the only trampoline that I ever knew of in the history of Irwin at that time.
Sure.
I mean, it was you had a solid built like metal.
Olympic. It was an Olympic trampoline.
Thing there.
Not like the little ones now.
Yeah, not like these little round ones where people put things around it. And stuff like that.
Yeah.
It was like a true blue, serious trampoline.
Sure.
And as kids, we would sneak on there until your dad would come out and tell us to get off because, with kids, liability, you could bounce all the way into the creek that ran down below there.
Sure.
That little creek that ran through there.
Yeah.
So that was a big thing for us when we'd be walking. There was a paper alley there.
Right.
Remember, behind your yard.
Right.
Yeah. So you could cut through. And then you came up behind the mayor's house and all, Stewie.
Stewie and Mayor. Yeah. Sure.
So every time we'd walk, we'd look up to see if anyone was home, if your dad was around, because your dad was our music teacher,
right,
at school. Right. So he'd say, "Oh, is Mr. Weaver up there or not?" Mrs. Weaver. So if not, we would hurry up, maybe do 3 bounces, and then we'd get off and then run up the Penguin to play our baseball games. But that was like the big thing, your trampoline. We were
just snuck onto it.
Yeah,
because they were just not as common back then.
No, there were none.
I remember there were like 3 in our neighborhood, when I was growing up. And we wanted to go on the trampoline. We just asked.
Yeah, and I think probably people would allow you, but back then it wasn't a thing. It was, and there was no safety nets around it.
No.
So
we always had safety nets.
So you had to know what you were doing.
Sure. And they had it in school. You had trampoline.
Yeah.
Back now they don't.
No, they don't.
The kind they do on the Olympics, or
that's what they had. They had one like that.
Yeah. It was a regular trampoline.
It was serious business.
Yeah.
And then in the winter they would take the thing off.
Take all the springs off and take it off.
Put it in the house and everyone would get, you kind of could know the seasons were changing when the trampoline went away.
Right.
The bouncy part went away.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's one memory I have of you guys. And then another one I have of George. Well, George was great. He was a great neighbor because we were in our teens, like 12, 13, 14, my brother, sister, and I. And, he always would, whatever we were doing out on the street, playing tennis or whatever, he'd come out and give you a hand. Or we had a basketball hoop, he'd shoot hoops with us. He was always a great guy to be around, a lot of fun. And always had a great sense of humor. So one time, I don't know if you remember, this is bad, I was bad, but there was an adult bookstore on Route 30.
Okay.
Do you remember this or no?
Not exactly.
Okay, there was one, and everyone would protest it.
Oh, okay.
And and they eventually got rid of it.
Okay.
It was where there ended up being a pizza shop there later, right across from Norwin Diner is where this was.
Oh, up by the diner there.
Yeah.
Okay.
On the right-hand side, there was a place. It was called the Adult Freedom Bookstore. Mm-hmm. And it only lasted like a couple years. Mm-hmm. So I decided to have this prank phone call thing that I was going to do. So I came up with a script and everything. And I said, well, who can I prank? I don't know. I pranked all the neighbors. Yeah. And I thought, and every one of them would be appalled because my line would go, I deepen my voice. I'm like 10 or something. And I'd go, well, this is Butch from the Adult Freedom Bookstore calling. Mrs. Smith or Mr. Smith, your Dolly Parton blow-up doll has arrived. And you got to stop by to pick it up. And people would be like, what do you mean? I didn't order a blow-up doll. Right. And then it would be this back and forth. Well, we have your name and your address as this.
Wow. Yeah.
And they'd be like, and then there would be, then eventually people would hang up. So then I said, I got to call George. I got to do it to George.
The ultimate prankster he is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I do the same thing. Hey, this is Butch calling from the Adult Freedom Bookstore. Again, I'm throwing my voice, and he knew it. I don't know how he knew, but he knew.
Caught on right away.
He caught on right away. Yeah. And I go, say, Mr. Weaver, your Dolly Parton blow-up doll has arrived. I want you to know that it's here, and you got to pick it up in the next couple of days. He goes, before I could even finish the sentence, he goes, is it the one with the vibrating mouth? And I'm like 12 years old, and I go, I don't know. And I just hung up. He was so quick. Yeah. He knew I was pranking him. Yeah. Unless maybe someone tipped him off or something from the neighborhood. But
yeah, he could be serious and not tell.
But it was so fast. Yeah. And I was just choked so bad. I just hung up and I'm like, oh my God, I hope he doesn't know. I'm like looking out the window to see if he knows it's me.
Oh my gosh, that's funny.
Yeah,
it's funny.
But what a character he was.
He was a teacher and he played jokes all the time. In school. Yeah, wonderful sense of humor.
I tell you, that adult bookstore wouldn't fly today. No one reads anymore.
No, there's no reading, but. Sure. And I guess the internet changed the world that way. But anyhow, we're blessed to have a Weaver here with us, Bob, and we're going to start talking to him about growing up. So did you grow up in the Penguin area on that street, or did you move there?
Yeah, nope.
From birth?
From birth, yep. They're on.
Okay.
Where is that?
Right above the Pizza Hut on Route 30.
Oh, okay.
If you turn up that road. And go up Ash Street, and there's a ball field up there.
Yeah.
So that's what we'd do in the summers. We'd all go play ball all summer long, or go on a trampoline. Yeah. Different time period then.
Different time. Easier time, I think, than it was for kids today. There's too many tough decisions they have to make early in life, where we were just sort of left to go out and play.
Yeah.
Come home at dark, right?
Come home at dark, or you could hear my dad could call my name from the house, and I'd hear him up there at the ball field. And then the parents would call, and would go back home. Then
come running for dinner.
Yep.
Yeah. So I didn't know this, but you have three. You have another brother, John. You had
John, yes. Yep.
So is you, George, and John, and what are the age differences between you three?
George is 49. John is, I think, 40. I'm sorry.
Born.
He's 79.
Okay.
And John, I believe, is 76.
Okay.
And I'm 70.
So you're the baby.
I'm the baby. I was the little brother.
The little brother, yeah.
They recently told me a story. We belong to the Summit Swim Club. Way up on the
up on top there.
So when I was a little boy, the three of us were there, and they were supposed to watch me, and I didn't know how to swim. So George told me they picked me up and threw me in the deep.
Oh dear!
And then I swam, and then when I made it out, they said, "Don't tell Mom." And they said they would have jumped in if I was
not going to make it,
but it didn't do me any harm.
No. That's kind of how it was. It was sink or swim. When you were a kid, you learn lessons like that, where your brothers or older siblings would just say, "Hey, give this a go. If you don't do well, we'll come get you.
Right,
if you do well, you just gain some confidence."
Sure.
That's interesting, huh?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you would have went then to Did you go to Pennsylvania Avenue School or Skull?
Pennsylvania Avenue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. And during your time at Pennsylvania Avenue, did you get into sports or were you into the arts end? Because I know later in life, obviously, you become a really successful artist. You've done so many different things we're going to talk about, but kind of wanted to get a feel for when some of that happened for you. Were you always doing the arts or were you doing sports early? Or
Sure. Now, I think I was doing art, and people ask me when did I know I was talented? And I say, I didn't know I was talented. I just loved to draw.
Okay.
So I got in trouble in school all the time because if I had a pencil and a piece of paper, I had to draw. So my dad, being a teacher as well, all my teachers would always see him and tell Bob to stop drawing and pay attention.
In class.
But it was just such a drive in me that I couldn't help myself.
Yeah. Do you remember some of the first things that you liked to draw?
Birds and animals is what I like. I like drawing a lot, and I can remember trying to draw sports type pictures, which is a lot of what I do now. And then every Friday night, my dad would take me to the 5 and 10 store in Irwin.
Yeah, the 5 and Dime down there.
5 and Dime, and
Murphy's.
I'd get poster paper and markers. And then the whole weekend I'd spend drawing things and cutting and making things. So now at 70 years old, I draw with a pen on poster paper.
Wow.
So, I mean,
you still do it.
Still doing a similar thing of what I was starting with.
Like Sharpie type stuff.
Right, with Sharpies is what I use, yeah.
Is that what you, wow.
Yeah, different size Sharpies.
Yeah, like some are real tiny. And
right.
Yeah. It's very impressive.
Yeah. So that's kind of where it
all started. And you did end up doing sports and wrestling and all kinds of other things too, right?
My brother John was a county section champion at Norwin.
Okay.
And so he was, older than me, and he was quite a great wrestler. And I think that's what got me into wrestling.
Okay.
So then that's why I started wrestling and just stuck with it.
You did it all the way through high school?
All the way through high school, yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
And during high school, I can imagine you kept enrolling in all the art classes. And was there advanced programs back then for artists or wannabe people that wanted to pursue art in college? Or did you just kind of do that yourself?
Sure. Well, when I was a sophomore, I signed up for art, but I didn't make it in because there were too many people, who were registered for it. But I did art on my own at home all the time anyway.
Okay.
So when I was a junior, I was in the beginner art class, and Alex Friendy was the teacher.
Yeah.
And he said to me, "Why didn't you take art last year?" And I said, "Well, because I couldn't get in." So he moved me up to an advanced, because he could see that I had some ability there. And then he spent a lot of time showing me a lot of extra techniques, because as a good teacher, he could see, I had some ability there.
Yeah.
And so he had a lot to do with why I went on to become an art teacher.
So then when you moved on to college, where did you go to college?
Went to Edinburgh.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Real good art school.
Great school for art, yeah.
And a funny story about Edinburgh, I got up the nerve to ask a girl to the prom when I was a senior. And of course, I thought she was going to turn me down, but she said yes. So we went to the prom, and I asked her, "What are you doing next year?"
Yeah.
She said, "I'm enrolled at Edinburgh. How about you?" And I said, "I'm enrolled at Edinburgh." And we've been married for 46 years now.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
What a blessing.
And she was a speech clinician at Norwin.
Okay.
Is actually what she did.
Wow.
Yeah. So we both went
So you
to
both
Edinburgh.
were basically in the school system here, her in Norwin and you in Yough.
I was at Yough, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So when you were at Edinburgh, you dated the whole time up there together?
Right.
Yeah.
Yep, we did. Yeah.
And when did you ask her to be your wife?
Well, after college, we both moved back, and we were substitute teachers. In all Norwin, Penn Trafford, Hempfield, all over the place.
Okay.
And so I waited till I got a job at Yough, and then that's when we went ahead and got married.
Wow.
And I really didn't. I wanted to teach at Norwin. It was what my hope was, and I was a Norwin assistant junior high wrestling coach, and I subbed one time at Yough in that year.
Yeah.
And then during the summer, I got a call from Yough, and they said there's an art job open if you'd like to come and apply. And I thought, I don't really want to teach at Yough, but I went and applied.
Yeah.
And then they were also looking for an assistant wrestling coach. So I was hired by Yough.
Wow.
And that was the best thing.
Ever happened to you?
It was just a wonderful school. And,
It's that
top
place,
to bottom.
That place is great.
And
the community's great. Sewickley Township.
Sure.
I just love it out that way. You know?
Yeah.
You get the Yough River and just lots of Sewickley Creek, and
sure.
you can a lot of great fishing.
Really good kids. A lot of farm kids.
Yeah.
You know, and they drive. They have a drive your tractor to school the last day.
Oh, do they?
Of the year, and the parking lot's full of tractors.
Yeah, kids from Madison and all over up in there. Yeah.
But like
Harmony. No. Yeah, Harmony would be Yough.
Harmony.
Right?
Yeah. West Newton, South Huntington.
South Huntington.
You know, it's the second largest district in the county behind Hempfield.
In space, but enrollment is one of the lower ones. You know. Yeah.
But they're really, really good kind of kids that go there. You know.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And, so I was really fortunate to teach there and coach there,
and retire.
And retire, yeah. And when I had a hard time retiring because I kind of was at the top of my game, but I knew I could do art festivals then. So get my pension and do that. So
do some other things.
That's what I've done. 12 years ago, I retired, and I miss teaching.
Yeah, that would be a hard thing. I just feel my wife was a teacher. That's why she taught at Jeanette for 30 years.
Okay.
And she obviously misses it too. But being an educator to me is just such a impactful job, occupation.
Sure.
You know, bigger than doctors or lawyers or anything, because you have so much influence over young people.
No doubt.
That you could move mountains with helping those kids.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Oh, sure.
They're giving them opportunities that they probably would never have unless they meet really good teachers along the way somewhere.
Sure.
And I used to get upset because you'd go to parties, right? You know, and there was a big thing where for a while, I don't know if it's still around, where people say, well, teachers are overpaid. They don't work summers. They get too much time off. And, I'm thinking to myself, do you know what a teacher does? And you know what the impact of their lives are.
Sure.
They're the most underpaid people in the world. It's just my personal opinion. But that used to really bother me. I don't hear it as much now, thankfully. But when we would go to, she's a teacher, and they would get sort of
sure.
Take some flack for that. And I just thought that's the craziest thing. How could you give flack to the people that are educating your children across this country? It's a selfless career.
I'm fortunate at the festivals running into former students everywhere.
Oh, neat.
And that's really special, and I do a thing where I take a picture with them and put it on Facebook.
Okay.
That's kind of a thing,
That's nice.
And I get to, find out what they're doing now. And I've gotten a lot of feedback from their day back in school and maybe what I might have meant to them. And I could write a book on what I've heard, and it's worth more than any money I could have gotten.
Yeah, it's priceless.
Pretty neat stories I
That's
get
priceless.
To hear. And then there's so many good kids out there too. So not only do I influence them, but they had an impact on me.
Yeah. They improve your life.
No question. Yeah.
When Bill Pracker was here, he was talking about a similar line of thing. He would be Kennywood working in his later years after he retired, and one of his biggest blessings was running into kids he formerly taught.
Oh, sure.
That were parents now, and bringing their kids, and he just said, it was just such a lovely experience being able to do that, because you can just see the thankfulness that people had for you spending some time with them.
Yeah.
Quality time.
Bill was a tremendous athletic director, when I was coaching there.
Yeah.
And before he was the AD, the athletic office was in the central office. And then when he got there, he said, "Oh no, I want my office down by the gym, by the kids." Mm-hmm. So that's where he was located, and he was
form relationships.
Yeah, that's what he did. Yeah, and he still does to this day. He still sees all those kids. Yeah,
he's a relationship person. He knows how.
Sure.
He covets building relationships. And,
sure.
I had him as a civics teacher at Norwin. At Norwin.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Yeah. How about this? He gave my wife had him too at Norwin.
Wow.
And he wasn't at Norwin long. I think he had someone had gotten sick, and he did a full-time sub job for a couple of years, I think.
Okay.
Civics. Yeah. And he recently gave us our seating. Like all the desks, where you write on, Fleming here, Smith, the seating, the chart.
Yeah.
He still had that.
He still had that.
From when we were in school in, it would have been 1970 something.
Wow.
In 8th or 9th grade. Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah. Great guy. Great family.
No question.
Yeah, love those folks.
Nothing better.
Yeah.
So going back to where you grew up, this is, I guess, a bit of a tradition for our show, but did you ever eat fried jumbo growing up, the fried bologna?
Not fried bologna, but bologna sandwiches all the time. Just a piece of bread with bologna on it, absolutely.
Oh, that's nice.
Yep. That was a lunchtime staple.
Yeah. What did you put on your bologna? Just a question.
My family calls me Basic Bob, so nothing on it.
Nothing.
Just bologna.
No condiments.
Just bologna and bread.
That's a true Pittsburgher that can just do bologna and bread.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
I always had to have brown mustard on there for some reason. Most of the times we ate it without frying it, but on special occasions we had fried bologna. Coming up.
Brown mustard and onions.
Brown mustard and onion. And Bill Priacco, he does just fried bologna every morning.
Does
Still.
he? Yeah, okay.
He eats 3 eggs and 3 pieces of bologna.
Yeah.
And he's what, like 89 or something? It's health food.
No, he's 94.
Even better.
Yeah, he's 93 or 94.
It's 93, I think. He's 93. Or he'll be 90. I know, like February, I think. 94 maybe, something like that.
He
could be 94. I might be mistaken.
He's having some health problems, but up to a few years ago, he was still doing, I believe, 180 push-ups a day.
Oh, my. Yeah.
I
remember that.
Yeah. I just remember him when he was our teacher. He might have been 45 or 50. Mm-hmm. And he had a barrel chest.
Sure.
It was that dude was built.
Well, pictures of him when he was back playing football, He was a beast.
He was a monster of a guy.
For sure.
Jumbo's a superfood. Eat your heart out, goji berries.
Well, the benefit of not putting any condiments on it is that it gave me more room for more bologna slices.
Yeah.
So you didn't just use one or two. You piled them up.
That's probably why you won so much wrestling matches and stuff.
I taste it now. I could still taste that bologna sandwich.
Yeah. So we do ask everyone about that because we call this fried jumbo because when we were kids, there wasn't much money to go around. So lunch meats were a lot of times your only meats.
Sure.
In your household.
Sure.
You didn't see chicken much. You didn't see steak much. You might get hamburger here and there, or you might get hot dogs or something. Mm-hmm. And once in a while, we would have liver. Did you have liver?
No.
That stuff is awful.
Liver. Yeah.
Horrifying.
Never had that.
So, but you'd get it because it was a cheap meat.
Sure.
They either threw it away or sold it for like $1.
Where did you get it from?
Right up by Natalie's there was a meat place in the Norwin Shopping Center.
Oh, Norwin Shopping Center.
Yeah, I forget the name of it now, but like Dan Natalie's was right here.
I know where that was, right.
And then it was right next to it. And I think it was like Sam's Butcher or something like that. Or some little guy butcher place.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I still remember it coming in like little blue containers.
Okay.
And it was just awful.
It's very uncommon these days. I worked at the meat department in Giant Eagle. We never handled liver. If you were going to buy liver, you'd get it from the frozen foods aisle, which we never handled.
Yep.
They don't sell it much anymore.
That's probably old school. Even from the old country.
Yeah.
Probably a lot of the people. Yeah,
we had some people on here that talked all about that. They were farm people and they ate every piece of an animal.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
They didn't. There's nothing that went wasted.
My dad did that. He grew up during the Depression, and the chicken, he'd eat every little part of it. When he grew up, they had chickens.
Yeah.
And they'd butcher their own chickens.
Yeah, they would eat every bit of it. Yeah.
Yep.
Now about your dad, I wouldn't mind touching on him before ask you a couple more questions
Oh,
about you.
sure.
But and your grandfather, you were telling us before we got started that all of you and your family have art skills, whether it's musically or drawing or art, or whatever you do with regards to the art side. But your grandfather knew how to play a bunch of instruments, and he started. What did he start for us now?
He started the Irwin High School. Was where East ended up being.
Okay.
Later, it was Irwin High School. They did not have a band, and he had come here from Czechoslovakia, barely knew English, started a tailor shop in Irwin, where eventually Joe Workman's was. Then after he was gone, and he approached the high school and said, "Can I start a band?" And they said, "Well, we don't have instruments." And he said, "I'll figure that out."
Yeah.
So somehow from nothing, he started a tailor shop, acquired instruments, got kids that would come and learn the instruments, and he formed a band. And then it was the Irwin Band. 35 years he was the director.
He was the director of that.
And then my father was in World War II in the Army Band.
Oh, wow.
And after the war, he came back and took over the Irwin Band. And then when Irwin and North Irwin merged to form Norwin, then my dad became the junior high band director.
Yeah, that's where I remember your dad.
Right.
As being our junior high band director and band teacher, or a music teacher.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. Very nice fella.
So I recently saw an ad from the Irwin Standard Observer from almost 100 years ago. And there was an ad for my grandfather's tailor shop. And
that's amazing.
And it said, Jimmy Weaver, clothing and music.
Wow.
That's all it said.
That's it.
Because he probably had to pay for
words.
For words.
Or letters, yeah.
So that was what he said, clothing and
music. Wow, that's amazing. So that's 100 years. That's what we love doing this show, is when you talk to people. So that's 100 years ago. So that your grandfather then could have been 20 some years old or 30 years old when that ad was placed, right?
Right.
So now you're back 130 years.
Right.
You start thinking about
early 1900s.
Yeah.
Early 1900s.
It's interesting.
Right.
And the other side of that, think about what he did with that band. That band don't start. Norwin's won national championships with their band.
Exactly.
And he started all that.
He started it all. Yeah. And I'd like to, being a teacher and a coach, I wish I could talk to him and say, how did you do that? How did you recruit kids? How did you teach them from nothing and form a band and do a band,
Yeah, that's unbelievable.
Yep.
It's just amazing. You come from Czechoslovakia with nothing and then have that large of an impact before you leave this earth. It just really is something. And then all the way down through with even your kids, you were telling me.
Sure.
All that artistic ability has stayed within your family bloodlines.
Sure.
Yeah.
My grandfather wrote the alma mater. Norwin.
Did he really?
Yeah.
On a grassy hillside, spacious, wide to see, or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
Stands my alma mater, something like that. Yeah. But that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Norwin, something to be, or Norwin, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm not the greatest with music, but
it's been a couple years since.
Yeah, it's been since we had to sing it. Yeah. But I do remember it. I do remember the thing. On a grassy hillside, spacious, wide to see. So that's the first line. That's good enough, right?
Right. Good enough. Yeah.
Good enough. Yeah. So, okay. So your grandfather, and then your dad, and then now you, and then why don't we talk a little bit about your kids with their skill sets? They're in music, right? And let me just get your wife's name too.
Colleen.
Her name was Colleen.
Colleen. Yep. And Colleen Shiring was her.
Shiring.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, and it's her father that played in for like NFL or started
her grandfather.
Her grandfather who started playing like for football and
early 1900s
for Maslin Tigers.
Yes, for the Maslin Tigers. Yeah.
How about that? Maslin Tigers came up on the last podcast with Jim Wexel. Oh. I was trying to think who came from Maslin. He said he talked about one of the Steelers that we picked up from the Maslin Tigers.
Okay.
I actually went to college with the kids that that were from Maslin.
Wow.
And played for Maslin Tigers.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, even to this day.
To this day, it's still a massive
high school
program there.
Right.
And so your wife's grandfather played for the Maslin Tigers back when they were like an amateur team that was considered one of the best in the world, I guess, or country.
Right. Yeah, he played late 1800s. He lived in Turtle Creek.
Yeah.
And he played for the Homestead football team. It was all amateur. And then at that time, Maslin and Canton were competitors, and they started paying some players from Pittsburgh
to come out and knock heads.
To come out and play, which was kind of counterculture at the time.
Right.
Because at the time, amateur was what everybody thought was the best way to be.
Right.
But anyway, then he would be paid, and he would take the train to Ohio and practice, and then play a game, and then take a train back to go to his day job, back at that time.
That's amazing, isn't it?
So, yeah, for sure.
That's crazy.
Yep,
yeah,
no doubt.
And you brought this book here called Gridiron Legacy.
Oh, excuse me. Whoops.
I got it.
Yeah, my wife's cousin is wrote this book.
Greg Fisery or
Fisseri.
Fisseri.
Greg
okay.
Fisseri.
Yeah. Forward by Franco Harris.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this talks a lot about some of those days back for the Maslin Tigers in 1906.
And this is my wife's grandfather, right in the middle. He was a center.
I see. He's a big dude.
And the equipment they wore was, I don't even think they had any headgear on.
Yeah, they just got like a sweater on.
Some little pad. Yeah, sweater. Yeah, right.
This is something. You know? Yeah, he looked like a tough dude. He got wide shoulders on him. Yeah.
Sure.
Big dude.
Yep.
All right, so that's really, really interesting. Some of this stuff, I had no idea. Isn't it great you have a guest on? You don't have any idea where this is going to go. And then
sure.
You learn about.
Probably weren't expecting.
Learn about that. Yeah. It's beautiful.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah, so that's interesting. I'd like to take a peek at this sometime. I'll have to buy one of that or Mm-hmm. But then, you said you have a couple kids and they stayed in they're in the arts, right? Music side of things.
Right. All three have music degrees.
Okay.
And my oldest son Jay has a degree in guitar. He's a great guitarist, and he right now is working for a company installing music equipment. Speakers and things like that.
He probably knows all that stuff about how to break the sound.
Right, the soundboard
and all that's complicated.
And all that kind of stuff, right?
Really complicated, yeah.
And then I have a son, Brian, who plays every string instrument, and he teaches at different places like the Main Street, Irwin. There's a music
the guitar store.
The guitar store, and several other facilities. That's what he does. He teaches all the different
I'll have to go see him.
Pardon?
I'll have to go see him. I have had a guitar for 4 or 5 years, and I play it from this YouTube videos, but I just can't, get good enough.
Yeah.
So I need to see somebody.
We're lucky. Our home was full of instruments and speakers, and as kids were growing up, my wife and I would hear, even to this day, the kids will just sit and play guitar, and it's a pretty cool thing.
That's amazing.
And then our daughter Amy has a master's degree in music. She was a music teacher. She's a better artist than I am. And she quit teaching to be a stay-at-home mom and was hired as a children's book illustrator.
Wow.
So that's what she does. So she stays home, and she's an amazing artist.
Yeah, we'll have to.
And she has 3 children. So
she's busy as can be. So, yeah.
She does her art, and she has them do art with her, so they'll probably beat both of us.
So 4 generation of people that are in the arts.
Right, right.
Basically, from your grandfather all the way down to your dad to you, and then your daughters.
Right. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. Mm-hmm. That's because one thing I have is I just wish I could be that way, like musically inclined.
Okay.
You know what I mean? That was one thing. Yeah. Or even like I wish I could draw. When I was a kid, I spent time just drawing. I could never. Yeah. I was not good at it.
Okay.
It just wasn't.
Okay.
It didn't have a natural skill or whatever.
Yeah.
But I always appreciated people that are in the arts.
Well,
because it's beautiful. Because you create something from nothing.
Sure.
For a piece of paper.
Well, music and art, I think, go together. When I taught, I had I had an art room guitar. Mm-hmm. So, and the art room was kind of a studio setting, and it was a pretty neat place. But at different periods, students who did play guitar, like yourself, would say, "Can I play today?" I'd say, "Sure."
Yeah.
So then they didn't have to work on their art; they could just sit and play the guitar.
Yeah.
So that you had music coming out of the art room.
Wow.
And then all the kids are working on their art, and it was pretty cool.
What a great environment for learning.
And there were times that the principal, we had a real good principal, he would bring a kid to my art room who played guitar. Maybe I didn't have him in class, but he had a blow up in another room somewhere. Mm-hmm. The principal would bring him to me and say, "Can he sit and play guitar for a little while?"
What a great principal.
And the kid would just sit and play guitar, and of course that would just calm them all down.
Yeah, he'd work through whatever was going through.
Wow. And then a period later, the principal would come and get them and then take them to talk to them.
Yeah.
But by now it kind of calmed down.
Yeah, calmed down the...
So, and my son Brian has a degree in music therapy.
Does he?
Which is
what does that entail?
Well, dealing at hospitals or with autistic folks, music can touch your soul in so many ways, or elderly, there'd be somebody with dementia that can't talk, but if you play a certain song, they sing it because their brain remembers that from,
Yeah. Remember Pappy Mike, my dad, he couldn't talk a lot of times about certain things, but he could sing all kinds of songs.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
It just was there.
No question.
And it just, it was always stimulating for him to hear music.
Sure. Well, when you could hear a song from your high school days, and it'll pull you right back to
that time.
Yeah.
And then like really the same emotions, you know, what you were feeling back then.
Sure.
Even if they were sometimes, immature thoughts, it still comes flooding right back to where you were.
Sure.
Yeah.
And art's like that too. When the way I taught, we didn't all do flowers and vases. Mm-hmm. I found out what connected to you, and I taught how to draw, how to paint that. So, for example, you have looks like the fish and the deer up here. So somebody's a hunter.
Yeah, it's me. Yeah.
So I would teach kids how to draw deer.
Yeah.
Who like deer, and they would be absolutely connected to it. Mm. Or somebody liked dancing. I would teach them how to do that. So I learned to not all do the same thing, but find out what connected with you, and then the kid would want to learn.
Right.
It was pretty cool to see.
That's ingenious.
Yeah, I think that's a very good method of teaching art. Like
same thing with music. Let people feel it.
Well, kind of a fun thing for me is a few weeks into school, the principal would bring me some kids who were getting thrown out of other classes for behavior. Mm-hmm. And not because art was a place to hide, but they knew I could kind of work with them. So I would, you'd see a student who I could see in their eyes what I saw was, I hate school, I hate you, I'm not going to do anything for you. I could see it in their eyes. But what I would do is I would say, do you like music at all? And everybody does. And I said, what's your favorite group?
Yeah.
And everybody has a favorite group.
Yeah.
And I said, how about I'm going to start you off with a big painting of the logo of the group. I'll teach you how to do it. And the kid would say, yeah, that sounds cool.
I'd be into that.
Yeah.
So now I'm going to teach them how to draw, how to sketch the logo, how to mix the colors, how to, and the kid would absolutely get into it.
Yeah.
I'd say you could take that home, put it up on your wall at home.
Wow.
And all of a sudden, it might take them 2 weeks to do it. And all of a sudden I owned them.
Yeah. You met him where he or she needed to be met.
Right. It was fun.
Yeah.
It was fun.
What a joy. What a gift.
And then the school let us do murals. So the school had murals everywhere. So maybe a year later, that same kid is doing a mural in the hall somewhere.
Imagine how much you impacted his life. He's closed off completely, hating school, hating the environment, and now he's creating projects that he puts on his wall at home and for the whole entire school and parents and community.
Right.
Think how much confidence you help that person build.
And then what I would do throughout the school day is I would tell the kids, everybody get up and come over here to Chris's table. Chris is working on this particular thing. And everybody comes over to watch you. And then, your whatever medium you're doing. And I would maybe ask you a question like, why are you doing that? And you're going to tell me. And I would step back and it was so fun because I'm like, here's a student teaching all these kids how to do this. Just take a minute to do that. And then I'd say, everybody go back to their projects and work as hard as Chris. Yeah. And everybody would work. And then you felt real good.
Yeah. You built confidence and the other kids took away ownership.
Right.
So you're solving several dynamic issues at one time.
And then maybe
observation.
Some of those bad kids I was talking about who are doing some good work, highlight them.
Yes. And you pull them right into this.
Nowhere else in school does that, that doesn't happen,
Yeah.
Now, you can't do that in every class.
No.
So,
But the arts is one that you can really.
The arts, you can do that.
You can really do that. And years ago, you were reading about some of these schools cutting back on arts and things. I was driving me crazy, I think. You don't understand. That's the soul of our fabric of our beings.
Sure.
It's our dreams and it's our thoughts and our loves of life is what shows through.
Sure. No doubt.
Music and art,
Yep.
That's really great to hear that you met those kids in a place where no one else might have been able to pull them from.
And it's really not a credit to me. It's just like a tactic.
Yeah.
Easy tactic.
But hey, listen, there are a lot of people that wouldn't understand that connections could be made. There was a lot of art folks, art teachers that would just say, hey, we're going to draw this logo today. Everyone, who's going to have the best logo? And that's
right.
Everyone does the same thing. And if someone doesn't care about the Steelers, how much would they really matter if they did it the way it felt it should be done? So I do understand. Sometimes you have to practice very specific things, probably to get your dots right or whatever, so you can sketch something out properly. There's probably some math involved, but the rest of it is probably just feel right and thoughts, and
And that's when I was going through school. You'd have to do the same thing oftentimes. Yeah, and I thought I don't like that. Yeah, and then you would have deadlines where you have to have this all done at the same time, and I thought I could do it better if you give me more time. So when I taught the way I wish I had been taught.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, you wanted to learn a certain way, and you helped deliver that to a whole nother group of people.
Right. Right. Sure.
I was talking, believe it or not, I had to go to the dermatologist today, and the lady was really thoughtful, and she was talking about the differences between generations of learning.
Okay.
And basically it's the same topic that we had here. Like when our parents were coming through, it was just very fundamental. You're going to do this work and you're going to do it this way. And if it isn't turned in on time, it's going to be an F or whatever, So there was not a whole lot of positive reinforcement. It was all sort of negative reinforcement.
Sure. Yeah.
And then as you started going through like the 70s and 80s, it started to change a little bit. You started to see some positive reinforcement coming into classrooms and things like that. And then now you're seeing even more than positive. You're seeing, let's let the kids find what their interests are and promote the things that they're interested in. So it's even getting drilled down even further and more specific. And I love that. And everyone says, well, Europe, you go to Germany, their test scores are 10 times higher than our test scores.
Sure.
But there's no creativity. There's nothing coming out of a lot of the European countries where exceptional creativity or new developments or discoveries or inventions. There's not a whole lot coming, but they can test well. I don't care if we can test well. I think you got to let people use their minds the way that and the gifts that they have within them and work from there.
No question.
So I think we're getting better at that in schools.
Sure.
Like just so you showing your classroom was really interesting to me.
Well, I think a teacher or a coach, you're an inspirer. Yeah. that's what if you're good at it, you can inspire somebody to do something. And I know being a wrestling coach, Penn State is dominant, and Cal Sanderson is the coach.
Yeah, he's a phenomenal coach.
And he has a big sign in his office, and I'm just going to paraphrase it. If you want to teach a group of men to build a ship, don't talk about hammers and nails. Talk about the endless adventures of the open sea.
Yep.
And then they're going to want to learn how to make a boat.
Because,
so you have to,
it's
have
going to
that
take
end
them
result.
to somewhere. It's going to take them to somewhere emotional.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's kind of
that's a beautiful thing to have in a wrestling.
Sure, it's
facility.
coaching or teaching.
Yeah, teaching.
It's the exact same thing. Yeah. I could write a book about some of the fun stories I've heard from the kids. Just recently at a show, a fella's grown up now, had him decades ago. He said, "Mr. Weaver," and we had a nice chat, and he said, "Boy, back in high school, you were always on me about concentrating." And I said, "Yeah, And I didn't yell. I never yelled or that sort of thing. But if somebody wasn't working, I would just kind of prod them. You need to work.
Yeah, redirect them. Yeah,
redirect them. And he said, I was just a high school kid. I didn't care about art, but you didn't let me just take it easy. You kept all the time telling me, come on, concentrate.
Yeah.
And I said, yep. I didn't know quite where he was going with that. Mm-hmm. But he said, well, I'm a contractor and I'm the finisher. I do all the fine work.
Yeah.
And he said, there isn't a day that goes by that I don't hear your voice still saying, come on, concentrate. So anyway, that was kind of
That's
cool.
Amazing. That kind of stuff gives you chills.
So he didn't become an artist, but yet what he learned
never goes away.
It never goes away. And like you said, that
right. So
finishing work is very difficult in contracting.
Yeah.
That's all the tough stuff, the trim work, the stuff in the ceilings, the plaster, all that kind of touch work. That's tough.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So he learned, eventually, focus is one of those things too. It has to be worked at.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's not something that comes naturally to a lot of kids.
Sure.
But the more you stretch that, like let's say you can focus on something for a minute and then you try the next day and it's 90 seconds and the next day it's 2 minutes. Mm-hmm. That can be expanded quite a bit.
Sure.
And that's probably what really helped that young man.
Sure.
So that's pretty cool.
Next time on Fried Jumbo.
Would it be all right to, Bob, to talk a little bit about some of the mechanics and things of not painting, but of the work that you do with your artwork?
Absolutely.
We'd want to know about your creative process. Like, how do you, from the inception of an idea to the finished product, what's your process like?
Sure.